And we have returned. You're listening to CSE Talk Radio. Made in America, CSE Talk Radio is. And we are interviewing Jim Stuber today. He's the author of the book, What If Things Were Made in America Again? How Consumers Can Rebuild the Middle Class by Buying Things Made in the American Communities. And our second question was, hasn't this been covered before? And, we should think about what's going on, but we do cover this a lot, but it just seems like then we just kind of throw it away and then we come back and maybe we don't emphasize on exactly what has happened and how we can change it. So let's talk about how this has been covered before. You'd think that the information be ready available, and we do have some books that tell about it. I think your book is doing a little better job of informing the consumer, though. So let's talk about that a little bit, covering this ground again. And why should we listen to you, Jim? What makes you an authority?
Yeah, I'll speak to that too, Beth. But I noticed that in the newspaper articles, what you typically see is a very superficial discussion of the how the stock market is doing and how the top line unemployment number is going. And then deep in the article, there might be some mention about how unemployment remains stubbornly high or something like that, but it's just all superficial. Mm-hmm. But then as I started looking into this, you would see the occasional in-depth article, but it just, nobody was really pulling it together. And so it isn't top of mind. People aren't really treating this issue with the concern that it deserves day to day. And the other thing I found was that nobody had really pulled the story together in one place under two covers. I studied political science. Those 2 degrees that you mentioned. I read the newspaper, and I thought I was fairly well informed about all of this. But I have to be honest with you that I did not know 95% of what's in this book. So I think that just for whatever reason, some people had covered this piece or that piece. There are some good books about the history of manufacturing in America. You'll find books, on different topics. But nobody had really pulled it all together. So I just went looking for answers to the questions nobody had answered for me, and I wrote the book I wish someone else had written. And as to your question about the qualifications, I had 2 degrees in government, but then I also have a law degree, which helps me ferret out the evidence, just kind of lead where the evidence will take you and marshal that evidence. And I was ready, with an open mind to go where the evidence led. But as I saw what was happening, then I took off my fact finder hat and I became an advocate for the ordinary American whose lives were being destroyed. And so this book was the response.
And I just got started reading it, and it's an easy read. I was a little concerned it might be above Beth's head, but it's an easy read, and I like it because it's a hardbound book. So before we continue our conversation, let's talk about how they can get the book.
Well, it is available anywhere books are sold. So What If Things Were Made in America Again can be found on Amazon or on Barnes & Noble, bn.com. Or you can ask your bookstore, and they will have one in a day or two. And then anything we're talking about today, I have a website up for a nonprofit we'll discuss, which is madeinamercaagain.org, madeinamercaagain.org. And there's information there about the book and how to find it. So I encourage our listeners. And by the way, let me just say now, and maybe we'll say it again later, but if anything we're talking about today tweaks someone's interest, please feel free to reach out to me personally at james.stuber@madeinamercaagain.org.
james.stuber@madeinamerca.org.
And that's STUBER.
Okay. We'll give that again. Why does it seem like everything is made somewhere else? This started out a long time ago. I went out this morning, I sat down at the computer this morning, and I wanted to see Ross Perot, and I brought up that debate. Mm-hmm. And, they laughed at him. And then they made fun of his charts and everything. But America responded to him. most Americans responded to him, the working Americans, the ones that are the consumers that are out there. I remember when I was a kid.
Yes.
And I wanted a pair of sandals so bad. I just wanted a pair of sandals. And I bought some from that local shoe store that I was talking about. My dad drove me all the way into town for that. And I thought they were special because they were made in Italy. Well, I'm a little short gal, so I like to wear my high heels. But any women's shoes, other than if you buy work shoes for men and boots and stuff, any women's shoes, heels, you cannot, they are no longer made in America anywhere. So we need to talk to Melania about that and see if she can't fix that. But there is no place in America that makes women's dress shoes. No place. To my knowledge, I haven't found it. If you found it, you let me know.
Yeah, I may have to look into that for you. But in general, you're right. 95% of our clothing now is coming from other countries.
We're talking about China, Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, I think I already said Thailand. All of those, they're all made somewhere else. And it used to be, we thought
That's
it was,
right.
thought it was special if you got something made in Italy, because they were just in, But now it's just nothing's made in America. That's not totally true.
Yes, and
that's not totally true, but
true.
those shoes are not.
Well, and that's right. Speaking of textiles and clothing and footwear, I decided where should I pick up this story, and I picked it up, Beth, at 1945, right after World War II. And one of the things that was happening then, our soldiers all came home, and they went to work. They went to work at this 30 years of growth and prosperity that we experienced. My dad was one of them. He flew in a bomber in the war, came home, and went to work in a steel mill. But the seeds of destruction had been sown in 1932 and 1934. Franklin Roosevelt and a lot of the congressional candidates were running on a free trade platform. And when they got in there in 1934, they passed a law authorizing the president to negotiate away our tariffs. And you'd wonder, why in the world will we do that? And you have to go back even farther then, back to the founder of economics, Adam Smith. And he had advocated free markets. And then a guy named David Ricardo said, well, countries should focus on the things they have a comparative advantage in. And so they posed these theories. Britain did not adopt them. Britain protected its borders, and it built up its industry with protectionist measures. And so we had to decide which way we were going to go. In 1789, we're getting things started, and right out of the Broadway musical Hamilton, Jefferson and Hamilton had this argument of Jefferson saying we should be a nation of farmers. That's where we have our comparative advantage. And Hamilton said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. We need to be an industrial power and put up barriers, do exactly what England had done. And so we did not follow the free trade path, but rather we followed England's example. Now, later, unfortunately, England did adopt free trade to their detriment, but we did that for 150 years until this 1934 law, and we said, we're going to change that. We're going to adopt free trade. So you're talking about Ross Perot, and in 1932, Franklin Roosevelt blamed the Great Depression on our tariffs, on these tariffs that have been enacted by Congressman Smoot and Senator Hawley. And so you hear Smoot-Hawley, and you saw that debate where Ross Perot, Al Gore is presenting Ross Perot with a picture of Smoot and Hawley and telling Ross Perot he was wrong about this because these tariffs had caused the Great Depression. Well, that's a bunch of phooey. I got to tell you that studies have shown that's just not the case. But we still hear people saying that. Oh, we can't have these tariffs. You're going to cause another Great Depression.
We have. I was going to say, we have these elections going on right now. We've got a big election next Tuesday, just 1 week from today. And here in the state of Missouri, she's not giving her own commercial, but in that commercial, she says the other guy is for tariffs. So you pretty much know she's against tariffs, and we're speaking of Claire McCaskill. And, I'm going to let you pick it up from there. They're still fighting this. So go ahead.
They still are. And this, I just wanted to go through this little history so our listeners could understand where this all came from. And it just seems remarkable that we're still fighting, as you said, we're still fighting over this question. But the fact is we did adopt free trade. We started negotiating away our tariffs, really in 1945, because this didn't really kick in until the war was over. So going back to your clothing, the other thing we started doing was fighting communism, because China went communist in 1949. So we said to Japan and to Taiwan and these other countries, you are not allowed to trade with China, but what we'll do is we'll let you make all these textiles and clothing and sell them into the United States. Of course, that destroyed our industry.
Yeah, let's talk about, we'll finish talking about that when we come back. We're headed into a break. Again, I'm going to hold off on the calls until after this break. 877-895-5410. We have a lot of information to cover. And Jim and Beth Ann will be right back.